Welcome back to the Wealth Guide podcast with the Riker team. Today's episode, co-buying property with a friend or a sibling. Is it a smart choice or is it a financial time bomb? So today we have a special guest from Inspired Wealth, Amit Sharma. And what we're going to talk about are the really important things to know. Are you financially aligned to be in partnership together? What happens when real life hits the pavement? Did you put a car ownership deed in place? Does it cover all the important areas that make sure you live through the journey and you still like each other at the very end? Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Wealth Guide podcast, number 64. We're very lucky today. We have a very special guest, Amit Sharma from Inspired Wealth.
Pleasure,
Welcome.
guys. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Short notice, you come to the saving. We're very grateful, very grateful. But what are we going to talk about today? Today we're going to talk about buying property, which is why Amit is here with a friend or a sibling. It sounds like a great idea. It's a really practical solution in today's market because affordability is harder than ever. But when does that shortcut become something more complicated? So today, let's unpack that, the legalities, the financials, the emotional, the non-emotional. And when is co-buying becoming such a relevant, and why is it becoming such a relevant conversation right now? So I'm just going to open it up to all you guys as experts, and let's just sort of start talking on that for a very quick moment. Amit, you're the expert.
On honesty, we are probably noticing it now more than ever. I think in current conditions, with Sydney, Melbourne, prices are skyrocketing, right? So for a lot of people, it's like, well, what do? Do I wait it out, or do I go in with someone, albeit whether it's my partner, whether it's my best friend, cousin, sibling, whoever it might be, right? It's a solution to get into the market, unpacking a lot of the things that are involved. It's the uncomfortable part, but some people are often seeing it like, you know what, let me just get into the market.
Absolutely. So it can reduce the deposit burden. Yeah, it's easier to acquire a deposit for a property and I think that is the biggest thing, right? The ability to save money, number one, and the capacity rules that come into play if you're young with inverses of the cost of property, right? So that's the improving that borrowing power and the ability to get in the market sooner. Yeah, so that's a solution. What else, guys?
I'll be the Grinch on this one, that's, I guess it's just so many to unpack with this one because co-ownership. Imagine me and Dean get into a property together.
No, there are not enough counsellors in the country. Not enough.
Just the time horizon. I'm older than Dean. Right?
Really?
Yeah, that's right.
Are you sure?
Really? That's a compliment.
Not by
Thanks
much,
for that.
though. Not by much.
How old are you, Jack? How old are you?
I'm 48.
Oh, wow. So young as well.
Yeah.
No, if you think about it, right? If me and Dean get together, not in bed.
Oh, metal male. We've only just started and you're already here. All right? We're not in the office.
I'd pay to see that.
But
Mate, you can go in with the
All right, let's get on track.
If you strip down to that co-ownership,
Love the language. My mate.
No,
My friend.
I'm stripping it down to our financial goals now. Right?
Yes.
No, seriously. Dean and I did two different landscapes.
Yeah.
What if you buy a property and say, hey, Dean, I changed my mind in 5 years' time because I'm going to retire. I want to sell this property.
Yeah.
He's not in that space.
Yeah, that's right.
He wants longevity,
Correct.
capital growth,
And that is the real question.
and layer that with so many things. Anyway, we'll talk about it.
Absolutely. And and that's exactly right. And thank you. So that real question is it's not about can two people buy a property together, it's what will it look like later.
Correct.
So how do you make it work? And that's the things that we really want to unpack today. So the first question I would say is, are you financially aligned? So before anyone starts shopping around for a house and a property, what should already be agreed? Because once you start looking at property, that's emotional, for a lot of people. Yeah. So what are those conversations? What should they look like? And what are people avoiding or not doing?
Look, I think just to start off with, just think about, okay, we're looking to purchase a property. What's the purpose behind it? Do you know what I mean? And what is our end goal, right? I think if you start off with the end in mind, I think then you can start planning and taking the right steps.
Yeah.
And look, Jack said it as a joke, but the funny thing is there's like someone, for example, in Jack's age compared to my situation, like he said, we're in two separate different areas. Right?
You're a baby boomer, or you're a Gen Z, and you're a baby boomer.
Not a baby boomer, no, but that's all right. But so obviously, like I was saying, so my journey and my around things would be a lot different to Jack's, because obviously he's unfortunately closer towards that retirement phase, and he's probably going to want to have a
is a play on word, my friend. Some of us would say fortunately.
well, fortunately, yes.
Right?
Whichever
So be
depends
careful
on the
what
lens.
words you use, because you and Jack apparently are getting married.
Not on my watch. But so obviously, look, everyone's got a different financial journey, and I think it's making sure that everyone's on the same path and the same ideology.
Yeah.
Because look, which I've seen in the past, the last thing you would want is to see where you've gone through, you're looking at banking on something for a long-term capital growth, but then you've got the other person there that wants to exit early.
Absolutely.
And are you really in a financial position at that time to actually potentially buy them out? And then if you can't, then you've got to then sell out when you're wanting to continue to hold and get that and maximize that growth side of things.
Yeah, and they're great questions, right? And they're great statements, because, even if you're putting in an equal amount up front, or if someone's not putting in an equal amount up front, how should it be treated? Should it be treated as equal? Should it be a split? Should it be a dollar value split? But I guess what I would want to unpack with you guys, just in the regard of like, are you financially aligned, is there's two different lenses here. There's what you would see, Amit, when people come to you to look at a wealth strategy.
Yep.
And then there's what you guys see as advisors. So what does that lens look like? Like, how do you position it with your client? So Amit, I open it to you to start with.
Look, just branching off from what Dean was saying, unequivocally, you have to strip away the emotions. That's the reality. A lot of people just go into the property first. I'm like, it's not about that. Like you said, it's about understanding the end goals, right? And co-buying, you're not dealing with just yourself, where you can control everything, or your partner, right? Like if you're buying under a joint tenancy, for a lot of the co-buying, it's going to be under a tenants in common, right? So it's less about emotions, less about fairy tale today. It's more about, well, what's our end goal? It's treated like a business transaction.
Correct.
Treat it like you're actually building a business from the ground. Get rid of those uncomfortable questions from the get-go. Most people shy away from it because it's a terrible conversation to have, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, what happens if you lose a job? What about this? What about that? So when you're having that, it's like, well, let's just say you're my bestie, and we're like, hey, what happens if you're gonna lose your job? What if you get married in 5 years?
Right.
What if we're not friends anymore? It's like not a fun conversation, but
You got to have them.
It
You got to talk
avoids-
about all the hypotheticals.
unequivocally, but it avoids that terrible scenarios that can play out in the next 5, 10, 20 years, right? And that's how we say it. What can go wrong, right? Because you don't need me to paint you a fairy tale. You can do it on your own. You need me to protect you from everything that can go wrong, right?
Yeah.
And what is your end goal?
I
And
love
how do we
that.
reverse
Very
engineer
good.
everything today?
Yeah.
Okay, I love that. And then I guess the beauty of, Dean and Jack, yourselves as financial planners, wealth strategists, tax strategists, when people are coming to you and going, you know what, I want to do a wealth journey or a tax journey or an investment journey with we'll use the example of my best friend. What is it that you're doing? What questions are you posing, or what agreements are you putting together or suggesting?
You just bring it to the parties, and Amit said to bring in the uncomfortable at the very beginning, because it's not just the two of them, the person's getting in together, the transaction, as Amit said, but also the same token, what about their families on that individual side of the fence?
Yeah.
Right? So how do they feel about you getting into this co-ownership
Yeah.
example? How does that affect them? How does it benefit them? It stems from the tree line on both sides of the fence as well.
Yeah.
So you need to kind of open up not just the two of them, but beyond that with their families
Correct.
as well.
You might be single today. You'll be married tomorrow.
Even building onto that as well, we then unpack as well around risk mitigation. Say, okay, well, look, if let's just say that you guys are both fine and there's no issues with it, then what's to happen if potentially something was to happen to the other person, whether it's around, knock on wood, hopefully this never happens, but they were to pass away, what is that going to look like? How are you going to be able to buy out the other person?
Yeah.
And so forth, just to make sure that they've got a robust plan in place.
Yeah.
And then, so like you were alluding to earlier, that all the uncomfortable conversations
good
are had
point.
up front.
Yes, I'd be suggesting that as obviously planners, when people are looking to do a contractual agreement, which is what this is, right? And that's how it should be treated, a contractual agreement like this. Insurances really should be in play, because this is not just about yourself. This is about whatever happens or doesn't happen to you genuinely has an effect on another human that does not live in your home. Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, let's lean on that and let's talk about structures, because the structure's not always 50-50. depending on who it is, how it looks, whatever it is. So, most people would probably, as soon as buy a property and split it evenly, but that's not always the right approach, is it?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Yeah. So, what is that difference? You've got joint tenancy, you've got tenancy in common. So the combination between the split and how it's set up, what should that look like?
Look, just speaking openly, what we notice across the board, right? So joint tenancy, as most people know, 50-50. We probably notice that most in common, people that are in relationships, married, de facto, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
That's often the most one people go to. It seems natural, seems easy. You know what? 50-50. Let's call it how it is, right? Now, it's pretty simple. That's what we most commonly see. And the one that's the, a bit of a, I wouldn't say dark horse, but the uncomfortable one is tenants in common, right? Right. And that's where what we were saying before, the uncomfortable questions come up. Right? Is it 70-30? Is it 60-40? Should we do 50-50? Right? And most people go about that and they're hit with a huge reality check when, things go south or situations change. Right?
Correct. And, you talk about that, the co-ownership deed, while it's optional, let's pose the question, should it be compulsory if you're doing joint tenancy?
In my humble opinion, it should be. The reason why I say that, it's a few $1,000s up front can save you so much dramas. And I'm talking about cost. I'm talking about emotions. I'm talking about relationships. Because let's just say me and you are best friends, right? We've been besties for 20 years since childhood. We go out and buy a property together. Let's just say we go out to Hunters Hill. We buy a nice apartment for $1 million, put in $500K each, right? And then I hope you can get an apartment for $1 million in Hunters Hill.
That's what's going through my head. It's like, I'm buying with you, Amit, if you're getting it there.
Yeah, let's rock and roll, right?
You're talking about an apartment or a car park?
I feel like it's someone's garage being sublet.
Oh, better than nothing.
It's still in Hunters Hill, right?
Yeah, but let's just say 5 years from now, you get married, right? But you are already married. This is a hypothetical scenario.
You're assuming.
So 5 years from now, you get married and you now, let's just say, need to go buy your own place. I'm still single. How does that change? We didn't have this conversation at the beginning, but now, things are going a little bit sideways. What happens now?
100%. And, I can give you a real example. So I have a friend that many years ago bought in with family, with a sibling. So she brought in with her brother. The brother already owned the property, but what had happened is they'd got married, their cash flow ability had adjusted, and he said to his sister, hey, buy in with me. So firstly, my friend, she bought in at half of what they paid up front, not half of its current value.
Right.
And it was in an era where the market had gone down. We're talking, a good 15 years ago around the GFC period. So that was mistake number one. Then mistake number two, in my humble opinion, occurred where the brother then 2 years down the track had decided he no longer wants to hold that property. Having that financial stress was too much. So my girlfriend, not only was she now at a point where she either had to buy out her brother, which she wasn't in a position to do because she was about to get married. It wasn't anywhere that she actually wanted to live herself. So she was in a position that she had to sell. She actually walked away with no equity after having contributed nearly 70 grand in deposit.
Yeah,
Wow.
Now, thankfully, they still talk, is my understanding. I don't actually see that friend anymore. It was a work colleague. But I remember it at the time, and I remember saying to her, why are you paying half of what they paid when they bought it? Like, this is transactional. You're treating this as emotional because it's family. You should be looking at the house valued. You should be paying half of what you've paid today. And then when they sold, that's when they've come to me and said, you know what? I should have listened to you because, it sold for less than what they paid for it.
Right.
And I put in equity based on what they bought. So, look, as I said, good situation where they still remained family, but they would have never bought, I don't imagine they've ever bought a property together again because once burnt, twice shy, right? And let's not ruin that relationship any further. But you would see these examples regularly, surely.
Yeah. I've had an example in addition to that. I had a couple and they wanted to co-own a property with their 2 adult kids, right? Sounds great. Kumbaya with the family, buying a property together for 4 of them. And I kind of stripped down to them, well, from a cash flow, from a tax perspective, have you thought about what this looks like for your adult kids? They're going to be paying extra tax with all this stuff and things of the nature. And they both thought about it and said, you're spot on, Jack. We didn't think that far.
Yeah.
We just thought, as a family, we can own this property not realizing the impacts to our adult kids. Having that discussion and say, well, maybe it's not such a good idea after all.
So what would you recommend if, like I have two 20-something-year-old daughters and the market is so difficult to get into. Like I've come to the realization that my house is probably going to be a sandwich generation and I will eventually need to build a second story, and that's what my kids will fund is the second story. Not me. I've realized that that's not the smart move is for me to do it. If they're going to live there forever, they might as well invest. But with that said, on a very serious note, I am encouraging my daughters to gear up their savings and buy a property together. But with that, have very clear parameters around the equity, the ownership, the shares, when they move into relationships, what the rules are around selling when, how, who, what, who gets options to buy out who. Like, how do you position that? Like, help me have more of a factual conversation.
For sure. Look, something that we do from the very beginning is that uncomfortable conversation, right? So let's just say, I'll give you an actual example. So at the back of last year, we met two siblings, right? Brother and sister. Yep. They wanted to go out and purchase a property together for the exact same reason you just mentioned. Alone, we can't do it. Together, we can. Yep. Right? So we ended up acquiring them an asset in WA, and the questions we asked them were, okay, today it's great, but what happens in the future? Yeah. Right? Because one's a tradie, the other one's, I believe, was working as a physiotherapist. Right. So what's actually going to happen? What if one of you meet a partner? What if in 10 years you want to go out and build your own portfolios? What if one has more of a capacity? Or what if the other one doesn't? What if one loses their job? Fast forward about a couple months ago, the sister lost her job. Right. And they never got that deed set up. But what they did have was goodwill. Now, what if goodwill doesn't work out? Right. Because if we're siblings, we're great. Handshake, let's go, let's rock and roll. But if it's two friends, that's why we always recommend having the co-ownership set up from the very beginning. Yeah. Right. And some of the things that you want to know is, okay, now the reality is no one can ever predict the future, but it's always recommended to have some sort of hypothetical timeline. All the questions, doesn't matter how silly they might be, right? It can be, well, what if we're not friends anymore? What if you lose your job? What if I earn all of a sudden more money than you? Yeah. Right? What if you become a hindrance to my borrowing capacity? Yeah. What if you get married? What if you separate? What if you move overseas? These might be silly questions.
They're not though, because they're not silly questions. They're just questions not asked.
Exactly, and most people know what they know. But what about the stuff that they don't know, right? And so a lot of people are like, oh, maybe I should ask it, and it gets them thinking. Right. Right.
When you talk to those, having those conversations with those clients, what's the typical response you get?
Yeah, I'm curious.
It depends how you come across, right? For us, we come across from a position of care. Yeah. Right. And I told them, you don't need me to buy a property. You can do that on your own, right? My job is to understand where you want to end up and not think of everything that can go right, right? But think of everything that can go wrong, especially under the co-buying structure,
I love that.
Right? And a lot of people are like, oh, I thought I was just coming here to buy a property. I'm like, you don't need me to do that. Every Timbuktu person out there can do that. You need me to protect you from telling you from this last 17 years we've been doing this, sharing the experiences, sharing the learnings we have, not the winnings, the learnings. People don't connect with you on winnings, right? They don't need me to tell them I've bought X amount for clients, I've done this. They need me to share the losses and the ups and downs other people have had with respect to privacy, naturally, right? And that's when it becomes like, you know what, this person's actually trying to help me, not trying to sell to me. People are being sold to, right?
Great.
Very true.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? So, and I love that. And, this is, again, even though I want my daughters to buy a property together, I would still want them to have a co-ownership deed because, if you don't want any relationship to end ugly, particularly when it's financial. But at least if it's friends, and not that I'm encouraging this, you can walk away from each other and not be involved in each other's lives and go, okay, cut my losses. Yep. But when it's family, there's a big, broader issue that then comes with that. You've still got Christmas and Easter. You've still got, family gatherings, and you want to still be able to get together and enjoy each other's company.
Quite literally.
Absolutely. So, we've spoken about structure. We've spoken about, contractual obligations or considerations. What about lending and risk considerations? That's a really big thing because, you mentioned before that you had a client who one's a tradie, one's a physio. Income levels are different for everyone. So when buying together, it improves borrowing power. It also can complicate future flexibility and capacity. So, what are those risks that sit underneath with a shared loan that people are probably not thinking about or overlooking? we as at Riker, we partner with brokers a lot. So we'd be subject to those conversations. And obviously at Inspired Wealth, you're, partnering as well with referral partners and agents and brokers. And you've got to be considering these things. Like, what sort of things are you unpacking, guys, here and seeing?
Once again, I'm not a broker, so there's obviously some of the trends that I've seen, but building onto that. So a lot of the time clients' circumstances are changing, and then they'll have a particular property that they would have purchased with a sibling or a friend or whatever it is. I tend to see more or less, to be honest with you, more siblings purchasing together. But then once again, the sibling decides to get married. They're looking to buy a principal place for their own. And because they've still got this debt from this investment that they've purchased with their sibling, it's hindering their ability to actually buy something for their family, right? And this is where goals start to conflict and where it causes a bit of issues. So, so that's some of the stuff that we tend to see.
It's funny you say that. A couple months ago, we came across one of our brokers. She recently got married. Her partner, pardon me, I'm not going to disclose his name, but he bought a property with his two brothers, all right? This is where the conversation went at the very beginning. Where are you at your life? These two older brothers are already established in life. They've got kids. They're well established in their family homes, right? Now, this younger gentleman who just got recently married, he wanted to go out and build a portfolio. Surprise, surprise, no co-ownership deed was set up, right? It wasn't spoken about. Now, the two brothers are like, we don't need to. We're already established. Why would we want to take on more debt? The younger gentleman who's very gun-ho and wants to build a portfolio because he's in his mid-20s, he couldn't do that. He had to go through so many hurdles, right, to do that. Now, is it possible? Yes, but guess what? The uncomfortable conversation comes up. Guys, I need you to help me extract equity. And if two people say no.
How attached are you to that financial relationship?
Correct. And it brings up such an uncomfortable conversation, right? And where this guy can potentially extract about $500,000 worth of equity, it's delaying his plans. And then the whole conversation comes up. Opportunity cost. I'm missing out the ability to extract equity, go out and buy property, which can subsequently build my wealth, which is being hindered by what you said, the uncomfortable conversations one have had at the very beginning. And this is why the co-ownership deed is so important, because it establishes the parameters and rules from the get-go. We have these conversations with our brokers all the time because tenants in common are becoming such a normalized thing now. And the biggest thing,
almost essential.
Correct, right? And I asked them, well, what are the do's and don'ts? What are the horror stories that you notice? And they say, we meet clients often all the time that purchase under a tenants in common structure, and the broker that might have used previously didn't ask the right questions. And in my humble opinion, don't quote me on this, don't hold me liable, a good broker cares about interest rates. A phenomenal broker cares about where you want to end up. Because there are some lenders out there, from what I understand, that love tenants in common and some hate them, but some look at the isolated debt per party and some will look at it as a combined debt.
But I would argue that I don't think that is the broker's role. I think the broker's role is to identify you're going to do something as tenants in common, for example, and say you need to have a financial planner or you need to see a lawyer to go through the legalities, the responsibilities, the deeds, and the executionable parts of those, because that becomes strategy and long term.
Yeah, so sometimes you may have to take a step back before you even get to the lending side and borrowing and co-ownership, and really building on what Dean said earlier. Okay, well, before we start borrowing it, releasing equity and all that stuff, let's have a look at what your key goals and cash flow would look like before we even talk to your brother and equity release that. See what it looks like to plan out.
Yeah.
So yes, sometimes you might have to take a kind of circle approach again and go back to that same goal as well. So
yeah, and I think it leads back to what we started with, which is before you even start looking at property, before you even get a loan, go, this is what we'd like to do together. Let's set out the rules, the boundaries. And again, I think it's really important to have that middle person. So someone like yourself, someone like you guys, where you can go, we're an independent person. We're asking questions that are not personal, but they're very personal. And they're the questions that you're too shy or unaware to ask each other and set really firm things. So, you put apart just beyond the lending, you've then got the ongoing commitment. What if you buy a property and strata levies increase or the apartment floods? What about those buffers? What are the rules around that? Who has it? What if somebody has better daily cash flow that can service those unexpected costs?
Yeah, exactly.
Then what happens to equity ownership or the payback of those debts?
So this is what we plan as advisors. I call it more of a stress test.
Stress test,
right? So for example, borrowing at 6%. On our cash will always be like 8% or so. This is what happens if you lose your job. We look at risk management even before we get into that side of the fence. So yes, spot on.
Yeah, so one of you might be more responsible for those ongoings, but does that then deem you have a high percentage ownership? So these are the things that you've got to really carefully think about. And, you know, whilst I'm all about equal rights and women and bits and pieces, so I say what I'm about to say in the regard of it could be the male, it could be the female. But if you're buying with someone and they're young and they're getting married, what if they're having time off work and their income is less, or their serviceability in that period while they're having maternity or paternity leave has a difference? So again, there's so many things to factor. Have any of you done plans for someone where you've gone through this journey with a client?
Yeah, we have.
Have you got an example that you can share without disclosing names?
Yeah. Same thing, brothers. You know, they're building their portfolio and property portfolio. One's single, one's just married. Going to Amit's, conversation, having that open conversation in the very beginning, they never thought about it. They just said, we're going to build a portfolio, not thinking about their personal situation.
Yeah.
And I brought it up in the both side of the fence. They're both of their cash flow. What I've actually done, remove one of the incomes and let them sit there and think about what's going to happen. And both of them said, well, I can help my brother. How long for? At what point? So having that, you're married. What happens if something happens to your spouse?
Yeah.
So all that unravels, like going back to that point. And then you structure in the way that they're going to be happy, an agreement, what those looks like.
Yeah.
And they can move forward because they've had that tough conversation. All right, bro, if this happens to me, this is what we can do before they get into that co-buying.
Yeah.
I had a story a couple of months ago. This one was actually sad, but this one here, she
You always have a sad story.
the amount of things that I see now, I haven't lost my hair for a reason. Okay?
That's a different podcast for a different day.
But no, but so this one here. So I had a client where she was older in age. She had a unit that she had purchased.
Right.
There was still debt, and she was fast approaching 70. So by the time she sold the property, she would have been left with a couple of hundred. Now she has her sibling. I think it was her brother or something, where he basically had a property, but there wasn't much in there, and they wanted to buy something themselves as well, but they didn't have enough money.
Right.
So they then said to the sister, why don't you come, you can live with us, you can buy a share of the property, and we can all live under the one roof, and then at least you're not by yourself, and so forth. So she spoke to me about it, and if she was to sell her property, she could have paid for her portion of the property, the third of it, in cash.
Yeah.
Right. Cash.
And then the remaining amount that their sibling needed to borrow, they wanted to also split the loan into 3.
Yeah.
Right? So she would have paid her share in cash, plus they wanted to pay a mortgage on top, right? And then I explained to her, look, this is what it looks like. Like, you've already paid your share cash up front. I don't understand why you have to pay a mortgage. But then once again, the bank wasn't going to lend them the money unless she was on the loan and she was servicing it. Right? Is that really fair for the client?
Yeah.
Right? And obviously, unpacking that with her and having that conversation with her, she was able to then say, okay, well, look, this probably doesn't sound as it should.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Okay, so let's throw a spanner in the works, right? And I'll say this to all three of you. You know, someone sits down, they do the right thing, they've got a co-ownership deed, they've bought an investment property together and it's all going well. It's hunky-dory, right? Everything's set out. But they've let's just use an example, year 5 of owning that property together. Their wealth strategy is a bit longer term. Should that co-ownership deed be revisited
100%.
and adjusted? Because, you know, we talk about super, it evolves. We talk about wealth strategy, it evolves. Tax strategy evolves. Our homes evolve, our lives evolve, our careers evolve, everything evolves. Goals change. Should it be revisited? That's my question. And what should that look like?
Without a doubt in my mind, because once again, no matter what stage you are in life, especially within that 5-year time frame, your life is constantly changing. There's a lot of so many demands. Even if you're younger, within that 5-year period, you may potentially have kids, right? You might need to end up potentially buying a bigger property. You might I don't know, you might think that you're going to go work overseas for a period of time, right? Your life is constantly pulling you in so many different directions and so many changes are happening. It's always important to obviously stay on top.
Yeah. What about you, Amit?
1,000% yes. The reality is co-buying is a means to an end. You're not going to be co-buying property forever unless you really love the person, which you should if they're your partner, right? But all jokes aside, right? It's
Hence why Jack and Dean should not be buying property together. The secret word is love.
Let me know when the wedding is. All jokes aside, right? It's a means to an end. You're doing it because you're effectively trying to get into the market, right? And you should always have a timeline in place. When I say a timeline, that timeline should be, okay, when do we ideally want to exit this?
100%.
My next question, I love it.
And if that exit is there, now the reality is no one knows if you're going to be exiting in 7, 8, 10, X amount of years. But some people will review every 2, 3 years. But I always recommend review it every year, right? Because what if you get 6 months in, you need to move overseas. So what are you going to do? Wait another 2.5 years until that 3-year period. So one thing we always recommend, whether it's done annually or every 6 months, have a check-in. Be like, oh, hey, how are things progressing? Where are we at? Are we in the right trajectory? And when is the right time? And these are all things that should be outlined and detailed in the co-ownership deed, right? And it avoids that, oh, well, hang on, you never checked in with me every year. Well, no, it was set out from the very beginning that we should, right? And then that at least you covered your bases, because if I'm in a position like, you know what, I need to leave now because I'm getting married, I need to get by my own place, cool. There's no ifs or buts. It was set out from the very beginning.
And I love that, because if I'm hearing you correctly, what I'm hearing you say is that, number one, a co-ownership deed should occur. It should set out all the uncomfortable questions that are not silly questions that no one's asking, and that should be asked. And number 3, it should be documented that there is a review time frame and when that occurs and what is allowed in that review.
I think that's great, because advisors, it falls into our domain quite regularly because we hold reviews, and that's part and parcel we do, and that leads into that, reviewing that agreement as well. Yeah.
So on an advisor lens, it's not the question isn't about can you buy a property together. It's how does it fit into everything else that you want to do.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I'll mention as well is it's so important, especially in the beginning, to actually have a conversation with a professional, more or less, because especially, for example, and I think Jack was alluding to earlier, where he was saying that their parents wanted to purchase a property with the kids. Now, in hindsight, it sounds great, but when the parents start to get older and they're coming to go to receive a pension side of things, how is that going to impact them? So having these conversations up front, because us as advisors, we don't look at today, we don't look at yesterday, we're looking at today, but also we're looking over the next 30, 40 years. Right? And how can this decision impact us over the long term, right? And once again, one of the challenges is as well is that once the structure is already designed and done, and especially if you've held onto it for an ample amount of time, that making those changes can be quite costly. Yeah. Right. Sometimes, or impossible sometimes, but it can be quite costly. So obviously, it's so important to actually have a conversation in the beginning, understand what's the purpose, and then after that, just building out from there.
Well, you're right, because when you co-buy, sometimes it might be a friend, it might be a sibling, but it might be a parent, right? And there are tax implications.
Implications.
See, you can't say it either.
Not implementation.
Implementation.
No,
implications.
Feels like I'm back in ESL.
I'm having one of those
Implications.
We're not going down that road a bit. So there are tax implications, there are income implications, and there are pension phase implications, right? So, and that's a broader conversation, but there are so many things to consider, and it's not just on the purchase on the day, it's that broader plan, that broader strategy, and also the exit plan, right? And what does that look like? I guess what I wanted to ask is, and we touched on it earlier, what should insurance look like in this arrangement?
From an insurance perspective, I obviously would want to make sure that in the event, if anything was to happen to the other party, I think more or less as well as having the conversation as well to say, okay, well, if something was to happen, what is going to happen with that share? Yeah. Right? Also as well, if anything was to happen to the person and they weren't able to work and they've lost that income for whatever reason, who's going to service them? What's that going to look like? Now, a lot of the time, there are so many different policies and insurances that can be structured to make sure that the client's actually going to be protected, so that financially there's no burden and they can still maintain everything as it is. But once again, it's about
I'll give you an example of that. Actually, I did one last year. It was the mom, the daughter, and the son-in-law co-ownership. Right now, the mom has 3 adult kids. That house, a portion of that house that they bought, is going to be inheritance for the 3 siblings. So can you imagine if something happens to the mom, who's going to buy out the share of the inheritance of that?
Yeah.
So one way I worked around that through the insurance, I actually insured her. So separate to the entity of the house asset, if something happens to her, the insurance pays that to the 3 siblings in separation to the house itself. So there's a clear distinction on that. Again, I have to bring everyone to the party because in their head, oh, we've got to share ownership of this $3 million house. That's not the case. So you have to make sure they're clear. Exit strategy, as you mentioned too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, let's all be clear. We're not the highlight of what we're saying today is this is a smart way to get into the market.
Absolutely.
But you need to be smart in how you do it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So I guess, I'm going to ask each of you a takeaway. So if someone's considering co-buying, and I guess I'll give 3 of you a different example. We'll use a friend, a sibling, and a parent. And each of you can choose which one you want to do. Please no fights. Yeah? Hands up first gets to choose what they talk about. But from this conversation today, what is something that they should talk about before they move forward? So what is that one conversation that most co-buyers, whatever format it is, should have before they sign or look at anything? Who wants to go first and pick one?
I'll go first. I'll go with the parents.
Parent, okay.
Yeah, and I'll say, how is this going to impact my retirement?
Okay.
So how's this decision going to impact the parents' retirement?
Yeah. And what are the things that should be discussed around that?
We're at the event of a retirement phase, what's going to be happening with everything. But look, in that instance, I think it is important to seek professional advice.
Yeah.
Right, at that stage as a parent, because there's only so much that they know. Obviously, speaking to a professional like ourselves, we'll be able to actually look into, okay, well, look, based on this decision, this is how it could potentially affect your pension. Now, if we've got $1 million property that's giving us $300 a week and we're holding on to that, but then we can't get the pension, then there's going to come to a stage where you're going to have to actually exit.
Correct.
Right? So, and understanding that, because then also then having that conversation with whoever you're co-purchasing with to say, when I retire, I have to be out.
Right. So having it documented. That's a great, you know
Correct.
what? I love that. And for clarity, when we say get financial professional advice, we mean call Riker.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just for clarity.
Call
Excellent. All right. Who wants to go next? So we've got a sibling or a friend?
I'll go with sibling. I'll use an actual case example. Let's just say me and my sister, right?
Ooh.
I'll isolate it.
Your sister is a powerhouse, by the way. You're blessed.
Oh yeah, I forgot you guys have actually helped her.
You're born well to have her as your sister.
Yeah, she actually pays for my phone bills because she works at Optus. So I'll admit that I'm a little
Shout
bit
out, mate. Shout out.
Shout out. To your sister or Optus?
Yeah, she works at Optus. Yeah, so
But who's the shout out to?
Have to be a sister.
Sister, come on, man.
And
shout out to me for having. Shout out to me. You know, because she's lucky to have me. I'm kidding.
A deal. Okay.
Look, all jokes aside, I'll give you an actual case example. Like my sister, she is 34. We're at very different stages in our life. And let me give you an example. She, I would say, is walking because she's very comfortable in life, right? So she doesn't feel the need to, I want to build a portfolio, I want to amass wealth, I want to have X, Y, Z, but she's comfortable. Everything she needs and has, she can pay for. And she's very comfortable, right? She's set for a rainy day. She can afford to do whatever she wants to.
She's being smart.
Exactly. And whereas someone like me, I want everything, right? Maybe that's just me. I want to build. I want to accumulate. So although if we were to join forces together, we can go out on a shopping spree and amass wealth like no tomorrow, respectively, it wouldn't make sense because for her heart's not there, right? It might make sense on paper, but if your heart and mind aren't aligned, and if she's walking and I'm running, we're going to be mismatched from the get-go. And that conversation isn't about what makes sense financially. It makes sense about, okay, is where I want to end up where you want to end up, right?
Yeah.
Do we need to do it, all right? And that's where the conversations need to happen at the very beginning, because that conversation has come up a couple of times, and I've thought about, you know what? If I join forces with my sister, oh my God, I can move into Huntersville tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is, it will be a mismatch made in heaven, because when I want to exit, she'll be like, I don't want to sell. I need to. Right? If I want to have kids, ideally I want to have kids, 2-3 kids in the near future with my partner. We're at very different stages. It's not gonna work out. And today it might be rainbows, like how exciting. But in 10 years from now, it's going to be an absolute chaotic nightmare, because different stages in life.
Love that. And look, my takeaway out of what you're saying, Amit, is number one, your sister is an absolute powerhouse. I don't have a sister, and if I did, I'd want her to be mine. And number two, you want everything. And I think we could all agree the one thing that you can settle on is that you'll never be the best bowler at 10 pin.
That's a lie. That's a lie.
That's if he remembers what he did.
Yeah.
Well, not everyone's a good karaoke singer like yourself.
Yes. Well, I was a backup singer for Beyonce before I had kids.
No, does Beyonce know that?
No. No. It was in my car while she was driving along. No, but look, on a genuine note, my genuine takeaway from that is, there has to be, whilst everything that you do when you're co-buying should purely be, contractual, not emotional, the two people doing it together have to have an emotional understanding. And if that agreement isn't aligned emotionally, the financial part just can't occur. And I love that you identify that. And I think it's really wise words for someone who I don't necessarily regard as wise on the best of days, but a lot of fun.
Don't say that about my sister. She's a nice person.
Oh, deal. All right. Jack, let's finish off because we're getting a little bit over time.
I think the gents,
friend.
I think all of you have kind of eloquently explained most of this stuff. The words that stems from that are emotionally transactional, exit strategy, having a conversation, having an open conversation, tough conversations.
Yeah.
They're all going to be relatable to those things and review it. And it's hard sometimes to have those, but if you don't have it, it's a greater disadvantage or impact on the track. So yes, it's positive. We have to look at the positives of it, but we're trying to mitigate that risk.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And look, I think if we sort of finish it off with today that, co-buying is a smart way to get into the property.
Definitely.
For a lot of people that can't get in, because the average first home buyer age, I believe, is 34. So it's getting later and later and later. But this can only occur when that structure is really strong enough to push you through life changes, the challenges, the difficult conversations, and not can you buy together, but can you survive the life of buying together and owning together and having a mutual understanding.
Yeah, let's plan it together and then work out a plan of attack. For both parties, whether it's mature clients, whether it's siblings, whether it's brothers and sisters, whether it's friends. That we need to work out a systematic way how to acquire those assets, efficiently.
Absolutely. Well, guys, a great chat. I've learnt lots. I am going to go home and get my daughters to sit down and do a co-ownership deed. They're both black belts in Taekwondo, so let's see how that ends. I'll keep you posted. Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for listening to the Wealth Guide podcast today. I hope you got as much out of it as we did. And just remember, the real question isn't, can we buy together? It's, have we got a setup? Will we like each other at the end? And what is the strategy in between? Now, stay tuned, because on the next episode of the Wealth Guide podcast, we are going to talk about the fact that financial activity, whilst it may seem good, is not the same as financial progress. We're going to have a special guest, Gabrielle Micah from the Finance Co, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Stay tuned.